welcome James. James, those folks in the Bay Area, they can't stop talking about us.
Oh,
They can't stop talking about Sacramento.
And wait a minute, the chat is saying no trashing the Bay. No, I love the Bay Area. I have a good time in the Bay Area. I got roots down there. I got love for the Bay Area. San Francisco's a fabulous city. It's 510 day today. So shout out to all my people in Oakland. They have this big old thing going on Lake Merritt right now. I got love for the Bay Area. I'm just saying, it's not going to be enough once 30 is gone. That's all I'm saying. It's not enough.
They're heading towards a very dark time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you guys still you guys still aren't on board with my hot take on Jordan Poole? I don't know.
Who was your hot take?
What was your Jordan Poole hot take?
I just told you guys. Jordan Poole, just to me, I watch him play. That's not a $140 million player or whatever he's making. And like I said before, I would take Malik Monk over Jordan Poole almost every day of the week. Every day of the week.
Well, I love Malik Monk, but I feel like these are two separate things. Like Jordan Poole, we can debate whether Jordan Poole's a $120 million player or whatever. Jordan Poole, I think, is very good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jordan Poole he's in a tough situation that they have to figure out. That has to be one of their top priorities. We could talk about Draymond, talk about Clay. You could talk about holding on to the past with these guys if you want to. We had a long discussion yesterday, Hammer, about how they've screwed up their future.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to figure out what you're going to do about Jordan Poole. You probably ruined Moses Moody. You sent James Wiseman to Detroit. You got to figure out what's going on here with Kuminga and if you're going to get anything out of those guys. But you've got to figure out Jordan Poole. And I think it's best if he plays somewhere else. I think it's best for him. It's clearly best for them. But I think Jordan Poole is still a capable ball player.
I do too.
Yeah, trying to find someone to take
despite
his
the most
contract.
recent history. It shows that maybe not be true. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think finding someone that will take on his contract is not going to be easy at all.
That's a hefty contract. We read the escalating.
Yeah,
that's a hefty contract.
Things went up.
That's tough.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, if you're gonna reboot, like, the problem is that they only have young and they have old, right? And the only guy in the middle is sort of Wiggins.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're kind of a mess on how they're designed. And I thought they did a really good job for a long time, the Warriors, of bringing in the in-between talent, right? The guys that weren't super old, but that could help you like today. And the problem is that they were never able to develop these other guys back behind that group. And that's trouble because you thought that there would be this weird handoff at some point. And that's not what's going to happen. This has got to be like a blow it up, start it over. And now, if they lose this series, they're caught in the middle like so many other teams where you don't have any good draft picks coming in at all. Like there's nothing that can bail you out for like 3 or 4 more years. And you're going to have to keep paying guys like Clay, even if you don't want to because of the legacy stuff. And I think that they're in a really, really interesting spot. And I hope that the Bay Area, like radio folks, I haven't listened to it. I hope they give Sacramento props because
nope, that's not what they're doing.
Well, they should be because the Kings wiped that team out. They pushed them to the brink and made them work way harder than they thought they were going to have to in the first round. And I think that that's what we're seeing. Part of what we're seeing from the Warriors is that they got beat up and worn out against a really, really tough Kings team. Came out on top, but at what cost? And that cost was 42, 43 minutes a night for Steph Curry for 5 games because they were in a hole and had to dig out. So, yeah, tough that they don't want to admit that. But like the Kings did some damage there, and maybe they recover, but they're in a bad spot.
Yeah, I mean, I look at we talking about Jordan Poole, and I'm with Damian. I still think he is a really good ball player. If you put him in another situation, I think he could. I think he could flourish a little bit. I don't know if it's going to be Golden State, but when you talk about moving on from him, I know we said the contract is a lot, but yeah, if somebody believes in him, like if the roster was set up in a different way, I would like to have him here in Sacramento. I don't think it's set up in the way to make it happen, but the money doesn't scare me because I think he's talented on that level to be able to justify 80% of that talent. Like I think he has, or that contract. I think he has that level of talent. Now you just got to find the right dance partner that is looking for that type of person. I know it wouldn't be this type of team, but like maybe a Detroit or Orlando or something like that, who's looking for a score that can stretch the floor, that can average 20 to 25 points a night. I think you could find somebody like that.
Yeah, I would go out on a limb and say he's a negative 40, $50 million player on that contract. Like, so how do you make that up? Like, the only way that you're going to move him is to take on another player in a similar situation. I don't think this is like a OG Anunoby deal where some team is coming at going to the Warriors and saying, "Hey, we'll give you 2 or 3 first round picks and a young player for Jordan Poole."
Right.
It's not even like where you were with Mikal Bridges, like where they're like, "Hey, 4 first round picks." And, the Nets still turned it down. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a player who makes a huge amount of money and might be a third, fourth, fifth best player on a team. That's not good. That's bad. I mean, you're basically looking at Tobias Harris range. And even still, I think I would rather have Tobias Harris's money on my books than Jordan Poole's money on my books. I just, again, I think his best role is as a 6-man. I don't think it is as a starter. That's just my opinion.
The all NBA teams are going to be announced here coming up at the top of the 4:00 hour. James, we dug up one of your old articles back in your writing 500 articles a year days.
Yeah.
And it's centered on De'Aaron Fox. One thing I think we cleared up, but just to have your confirmation on this, why wouldn't De'Aaron be eligible for the escalator in his contract if he makes the All NBA team this year?
I'm pretty sure because he's already too many years into his contract.
So that's what Rory said. That's what we were able to dig out. The All NBA escalator was good for the first year of the contract.
Yeah, it's what we saw with Anthony Davis a couple of years ago. Where it was like if he made the third team, he was going to get an extra something crazy like $90 million, and he ended up making it with like a third team. So yeah, it's interesting. Like I don't think that it will impact Fox's stuff at all right now, but down the road, if he ends up being a multi-time All NBA player, then he's eligible for a larger percentage of the overall contract of the overall team salary. So like those Supermax players, I think they're eligible for 30% of the entire salary cap for a team, and that's huge.
Do you think he makes it?
Man, he's on the bubble. I think he does. Like if I look at the voting for MVP, where Fox came in 11th, that tells me that yes, he got votes, or at least he should, because those are the same people voting on the same exact ballot that are voting for players. So as far as media members, and so I'm going to guess that he's got a really good shot at making third team. I think Sabonis second/third team, and Fox is very possible in that third team.
Yeah, the one of the things that I think about with that, and I'm pretty sure, are we 100% sure they're going to have Luka as a guard?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he does play point guard for the most part, but he's also a small forward playing point guard. So I don't know.
Well, Domas also plays center, and
right. They got him listed as a forward as well.
Yeah, you've noted that he's listed as a forward/center, and
hey, every time the NBA puts out Player of the Month or Player of the Week, it always says Domantas Sabonis forward. So that's a good thing.
That's crazy.
That's a good thing for him.
Forward.
No, but I think he can fit into both categories. Yeah, if I'm looking at it, like I would have a tough time seeing him not be. I think he's second team if they get him in as a forward. If it's just straight up centers, then it's third team. And I don't think there's any way that he gets left off.
Yeah.
But Fox is a different story.
It probably boils down to Anthony Davis, right? How badly do they want to get, because it's clearly Joel and Jokic, and then it's just a matter of, are you putting Anthony Davis in as the third center? Are you working Domas in somewhere else? I would be surprised if Domas is left off too, but I feel like in terms of a center, the only thing we're talking about is Anthony Davis.
Yeah, and Davis played 56 games.
That's been like our discussion with Steph, Dame.
And his team was a play-in team. Yeah. So I think Ja will get penalized for his off the court stuff. I think that he'll have a tough time making it. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander will make it for sure. I mean, we saw how his he was in the MVP balloting. That showed you everything you need to know about him, where he stands with the media. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to come down to, like, what do you do with Damian Lillard? I mean, he put up 30 something points a game, but he played for a really bad team that had no business being bad. They were just bad. So like, if anyone can explain why they were so bad, like, go ahead and do it, because I'm confused.
He also played less than 60 games.
Yeah.
Which that's not for those, that's not a barometer this year. It's a barometer next year in the new collective bargaining agreement. It's not this year, but the rule for the new collective bargaining agreement was kind of out there before the votes were put in for this all NBA team, which James has always made me wonder how many people are keeping next year's rule in the back of their head when placing these votes for today's announcement. And there's a lot of guys. Steph Curry, it's hard to imagine Steph Curry not being on an all-NBA team, but he only played 56 games. So if this were next year, he wouldn't make it, and it wouldn't be a question. But did they take that stuff into account when voting this year?
Yeah, I think he'll make it, like Steph. Like, I'm pretty sure. But then what do you do? Like, how do you give it to Steph but not to AD? You know, like, how do you balance that out? And so I think that's a problem. And I don't know the solution. You know, even like, what do they say? 65 games? Is that what the new cutoff
I think that's
is?
the number.
That's high.
65, 68, something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of high as far as like how many games played to me in my book. You know, like, you hope that guys play 65 games, but that's, you know, even Fox played what, 72? 73. Okay, so he missed 9 games. Yeah.
None
So
of those guys that we talked about earlier played more than 60.
65
between Ja, Steph, and Dame, none of them played 60. So that's a interesting cutoff point. We're 60, 65, you said, right?
65 is the number.
It's
Yeah.
Interesting cutoff point right there. Two things real quick. Shout out to JV. Nice little comment here in this section. He said, perks of not watching Kings basketball. Domas eligible as a power forward. So it happens when you don't watch.
that's true.
And then I was trying to see what the wording was, because you talked about the wording on like players of the week for Sabonis. Always have him as a forward or a center. I was trying to see what it was with Luka. I never really, where I looked, I never got a clear answer. But it was just interesting. The one of the weeks he won it said 23-year-old superstar had arguably the best week of his NBA career with averages of 48.7 points,
Jesus.
13 rebounds, and 10 assists in a 3-0 stretch for Dallas. He topped 50 points twice, including a 60.21 rebound triple. We talk.
Yeah, he
well,
good.
I ain't even gonna say we. I'll speak for myself. I talk a little crazy about Luka every now and then. Don't ever get it twisted. That man can hoop.
Yeah,
He can hoop. He is sick with the rock, man. That line just stuck out. Averaging 48.7 for the win.
Just a casual little mention.
That boy tough, man.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, there are some like just flat out shoe-ins for all NBA that, you know, you just can't avoid. But like, at the same time, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Fox and Sabonis both to make it this year. And I think it's motivation for these guys, no matter what. I would like to tell you that I know, and I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I do know that the Kings did hold a pre-draft workout today. So,
Who was it? Who was my guy? What's his name again?
Victor Wembanyama.
I'm hearing most notably
Sensabaugh. That's what I was going to say.
Oscar. I don't know how to say it. Kid from Kentucky. TSHIEBWE.
I remember seeing him. I got to see.
Somebody give me that one because I don't know. I don't like if he gets drafted by the Kings. I feel for Scott Moak because I don't know how you're going to say his name.
Just got to practice it. Sir, how do you say your name? You say it and then you practice it.
There it is.
Was that he was the only guy who was here?
That's the only one that I've heard. 6 participants. Several of these participants will be in Chicago next week, and the Kings will be in Chicago next week for the combine. So
the NBA combine. How many people even knew the NBA combine was a thing? Well, I know that you did, but I don't feel like the NBA combine is the circus that the NFL combine is.
No, it's become a bigger situation in the last, what'd you say, Ham? Maybe
because of
7 to 10 years.
Oh, 7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's been a lot longer. Well, I mean, I've known about it for a lot longer than that.
Well, no, I'm not questioning whether it's been in existence.
Well, what I'm saying, it's a bigger deal. Like they televise it now. They didn't always televise it.
Yeah, but it's been sullied over the last few years by these players that won't even go and measure. You know, you can't even get them to do wingspan measurements or height or weight. I mean, even like Keegan Murray didn't go to the combine.
Combine's still less than summer league.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I've wanted to go forever, but at this point, you know, the Kings aren't going to have, at least for the next 2 years, chances are they won't have lottery picks. Like unless things fall apart next year, they probably won't even have a draft pick next year. So, yeah. Well, they won't have a first round pick. My bad.
I know this guy from Kentucky. He he's the national player of the year. Big man.
I can't say his name either.
Shebway?
Is that somebody said Shebway?
To Shebway. That's what Mark Souza says in the song. Shebway.
He's actually a pretty good college ball player. He's like 6'9" and he played center at Kentucky. I don't know how that's gonna work out, but he's a legit big man. He ain't no 5'4" or 4'3". He's a big
6'9".
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He played that in college. I don't know what that's gonna look like in the NBA, but he was the national player of the year. Like he was a good ball player. I think him. I believe it was him. I think him and Walker Kessler had a really good game, not this past year, but the year before, when Kentucky was like top 10, Auburn was like number 2. Him and Walker Kessler went ahead. I remember that's the first time I seen him.
Well, it tells you everything you need to know about where I'm at with pre-draft stuff that I haven't even started looking at guys like that yet. Because I mean, that's just where we're at. Like this has been a crazy season. 6'9", 260-pound center. He's 23. You know, he's rated on Tankathon as a 59th best prospect. Big time rebounder, not a great shot blocker. Yeah, big boy.
I like him in the second round.
Yeah. Well, the Kings have a deep second round pick too.
Yeah.
When are you going to start? When do you think you'll start diving into the draft?
Right now? Yeah. Like I'll start doing. I've got a Davion piece that I haven't put up yet. I've got a Trey Young piece going. I mean, a Trey Lyles piece going up today. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, like when you have playoffs, you put that stuff to the side and not really focus on the draft. And then usually I'm like 3 months into studying, but in this season's draft, it's, you know, this year, you knew the Kings weren't going to have a high draft pick, number 1, and number 2, there was just too much to cover all the way down the stretch.
Damian asked me a question earlier, and I'll ask you the same one, James. He said, do you believe that this group is going to come back hungrier or as hungry or hungrier than they were this year? There was a clear and relatively simple goal of making the playoffs this year that everybody was on board with. I don't think that's good enough for anybody involved. The players, the coaches, the ownership, the fans. That's not going to be good enough being your goal next season. Do you think this group can elevate that goal and say, hey, we were holding Looney to 15 rebounds and Steph to 40 points away from advancing in the playoffs? Like, we are not far from being that upper echelon team. Do you think they'll be motivated by that, or are you worried about some type of complacency setting in with this group?
Oh no, I don't worry about any complacency at all. Like this group, and I'll even their goal is not to make the playoffs. They wanted a playoff run. That's what Harrison Barnes said. It's what Mike Brown said after the season. They were looking for a run, and I expect them to be extremely motivated. This why not us mentality. I get it, but I also think that they're going to make improvements. You see what you need. It wasn't like difficult to see the deficiencies of this team. It's just filling those gaps wasn't going to be easy. And I think that that's what they're going to do this offseason is they're really going to focus on like how do we get the length and athleticism we need? How do we get the players to complement Domas even more to protect him as a defender? How do we fix these issues that we have? And I think that they're going to come back stronger and very, very motivated. They got a taste of the good life this season, and I think they liked it and they want more of it. And so I would be shocked if we saw this team really take a step backwards. Now that doesn't mean they're going to win 49 games, but like I expect them to like push forward and try to become a better team.
They had caviar this year. You ever had caviar?
I have.
Have not.
I'm not interested in it, to be honest with you. No, not interested. But that reminds me though, James, the question that I had yesterday for everybody. I want to ask you because I really want to hear what you got to say about it. I felt like looking at the layout of this roster and contracts and things of that nature, it feels like this is the summer to make your big swing. And you look at Harrison Barnes, and if you feel like you can be a championship team with Harrison Barnes, you bring him back and you start making that move towards being a championship team. But if you don't, it feels like this is the summer that you have to say, you know what, we're going for the gusto. Because you look forward, everybody's locked up or going to be locked up moving forward. Fox is going to be locked up. Sabonis is going to be locked up. Keegan Murray is going to be locked up. You got to be able to take care of Malik Monk. And if you sign Harrison this year or you go get somebody else, like this team is going to essentially be in place for like the next 2 years. This summer seems like the one time where you can make that move. Do you agree with that type of timeline, or am I projecting a little too much?
Yeah, I mean, this is one summer where you can do it. This is one, there's only a handful of times when the Kings have an opportunity to get better. And this is one of those prime times where you're looking at it like you got to do everything in your power to take a step forward to convince Domantas Sabonis to sign a massive, massive extension next summer, right? So this is a big summer in that regard. I think retaining Malik Monk is going to be like slightly easier than we're making it out to be. I don't think Monk is going to go out there and chase a couple $1 million more to leave a really good situation in Sacramento alongside De'Aaron Fox. But the rest of them, yeah, this is that moment where you're building. Like we always talk about like the rebuild. Are the Kings going to scrap it and rebuild? This is how you build a team. You start with a really solid season where you make the playoffs. You start with a really good 7-game series to teach you, and then you have to build from there. And so I expect them to attack this summer really, really hard and try to add like a couple of pieces that make a lot of sense. But I'll also like keep coming back to this. Like it's roster building 101, rotation building 101. Like if you're chasing Sasha Vezenkov right now, like hopefully they're being really, really realistic about what that means, like who he is as a player and what he can do for this franchise. And you can, hope that he's going to be excellent at the NBA level, but there's no guarantee that he's going to be anything more than like a 7, 8, 9, 10 man in your rotation. So you need to go out and attack this summer as if you're filling the rest of the holes the right way. You got to have those long athletic defenders. You've got to have more shooting when the shooting goes astray. You've got to figure out a long-term answer at the small forward. There's all of these pieces that they have to figure out. And even for a guy like I wrote on today, like Trey Lyles, like what does all this mean for Trey Lyles? He's a guy who's like professed his love to this city and this franchise and wants to be back. And he's got to be like one of the best bargains of all time this season. But does he fit with Sasha? Does he fit? Can you come back into next season with Sasha and Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray and Trey Lyles as your 4 forwards and not address the length and athleticism and defensive play that you knew was a problem last year? And the answer is probably not. So like there's going to be like, this is musical chairs, and there's not going to be enough chairs for all the bodies that want to be back in Sacramento for next season. And so you got to worry that you're going to be the odd man out.
I feel like we're doing a lot with Sasha. And I speculate it's because he's playing. And he's playing at a really high level. So, it's the only remaining Sacramento King that we can watch. And you can pull up the highlights, or you can watch the games, or you can read the articles. And it feels like we're just really falling for this guy we've never seen in the league and haven't seen against NBA talent. And, we've asked all year, before the earlier deadline, like, where is he going to fit? And you just mentioned the 7, 8, 9, 10 part of the rotation and how it probably doesn't work with everybody. And so I'm just like, man, let's all enjoy it. We talk about it. We're in the content creation business, but let's maybe slow down a little bit on this Sasha thing and just see how it plays out with the rest of what Sacramento does. Like the Keegan Murray thing. Whoa, Keegan Murray that sure felt weird in the moment. Until you go get Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk and you realize how all this comes to, how this puzzle forms. Well, let's see how this offseason puzzle forms for Sacramento.
Yeah.
Before we fall in love with an overseas player who's never played in the league before.
I think it's super complex. Like, that's what I love about that side of it. These guys have to be, like a lot of it is chess, but a lot of it is like advanced puzzle like creation. How do you solve this? What player works with what player? Like what is not going to work? How do you fill the holes without like, disrupting the flow of what you already have? Like there are all these questions. Like if you're going to lose Harrison Barnes, you need his 3-point shooting. So Sasha Vezenkov makes sense, but that means that Keegan Murray has to play the 3 for huge amounts of time. And you still haven't addressed the biggest issue. And you still don't know what you have. If he's in Sasha, is he 18-minute per game player? Is he 28-minute per game player? These are like major questions that you have no idea. And so I expect them to attack all of these. Like there's going to be a lot of different looks that the Kings have this summer. We're going to hear a lot of different names that you're like, I wonder how that works. And then you kind of piece it together with the pieces they already have. And you start looking for these little 2 and 3 man combinations that you think might work. And, I think that that's what the Kings will do. They're going to try to like find all of these little formulaic things that work and things that they think will not work. And then try to put together a team that's better than what they had last year. And there's no guarantee that they'll find the perfect mesh.
We'll come back. We'll talk more with our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham, when dealing with KC, brought to you by Sky River Casino. Returns here on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320. Sorry, guys. I got to get up for a second.
Good.
Steve Brown, I'll answer this. Part of this probably just trying to get a return on the investment. The guy has no value for the Kings if he's playing overseas. The Kings don't value their 2nd round picks. Like this group, they don't care. They don't care at all. So I just want to put that out there. Like at least like how they've handled their 2nd round picks, they don't value them. And so like they also have a very interesting way that they look at talent and they look at the draft. So like I know very specifically, they value more what they can see, what is tangible, what a player has done than who they project a player could be. Because, the NBA has been like fortunes have been won and lost by by projecting a player to be something that he doesn't ever turn out to be. So they really like to know exactly what they're getting in a player. And so my example would be Keegan Murray, like the most seasoned NBA player, college player coming into last year's draft, no question. They knew exactly who they thought he could be at the next level, and they have an idea of where they think they can get him. Davion Mitchell, same exact thing. Tyrese Halliburton. If you looked at Tyrese Halliburton's stats at Iowa State, his sophomore season, he was a superstar. You just didn't know if it would translate. The Kings look at those stats and they say, okay, we know who he can be because he's already done it. And it's kind of a weird way that the Kings have of looking at players. They don't take gambles on players like Jaden Ivey or Shaden Sharp because there is no 100% positive of what those players are going to become. And I think the Kings are okay with a lower baseline if they're okay with a lower ceiling if the floor is higher.
Do you think they look to take a little bit more of a risk at 24? I mean, because you look at those other picks, top 10 picks, except for Tyrese, who's like 12 or whatever, but the stakes are so high, you can't really take a gamble there. You much rather take the sure thing. But now you got a couple of young guys that worked out. You turned Halliburton into Sabonis. At 24, maybe I do, take a swing at a high upside guy.
I'm gonna say that they're the same people they are day in and day out. And I'd also put it this way too. Like I look at the 24th pick, which I guess there's still possibility that it's not the 24th pick, that they move up higher than that because the Lakers are alive still. So if I'm looking at like what they would do with that pick, I think there's a higher likelihood that they either package their 2 seconds and move up a couple of spots, like to 16 or 18, or that they trade the number 24 pick for a seasoned player that they think is skilled and fits a need. Because a first round pick is a first round pick. There are players out there that you can go get with that first round pick. Again, people out there love PJ Washington. If you want PJ Washington and he's a restricted free agent, you can offer up that pick to stop them from matching. If you want Cam Johnson and you think that the Nets would possibly let you negotiate with Cam Johnson in exchange for the player that's going to be there at number 24, that might be something that you do.
I do that for both players in a heartbeat. If they told me, hey, you give us your first round pick for PJ or for Cam, done deal.
Well, I'd even look at a guy like, let's say, Jared Vanderbilt and say, would the Lakers be willing to trade a $5 million player for the 24th pick in the draft? Because then they'll turn around and use that pick to trade like the most bloated, ridiculously horrible player for the best player on the Utah Jazz. And, they'll steal some other player away. But for me, I think that there's a lot of ways in which the Kings will try to improve. And I don't even look at the pick as like all that value. I don't think that they will draft at 24 or
No.
I have a, yeah.
We can continue this conversation that was happening during the commercial break. Kenny and Hammer are trading the draft pick away. James got a full-on plan how to finally get Jared Vanderbilt in the Sacramento Kings uniform. And I think it's the Kings just having a lot of flexibility with this pick coming up here is the gist of what you two were talking about.
Yeah. Look, the Kings are going to try to improve their roster now. That's where they are. And gambling on a pick at number 24, I don't know. What are you going to get there? You might be able to find a diamond in the rough. You might be able to find a player that 2 years from now is really good. You might be able to stumble upon the next Herb Jones, right? That might be something that happens. But I also think that there's a possibility that you can take that pick and just move right out. And so, I think that they're going to explore every single option. And yeah, I don't know, because again, this team has traded their second round picks repeatedly this group has. And it makes me feel like, I mean, like they gave up a pretty decent second round pick for Sasha Vezenkov and didn't even bat their eye, and then sold the other one or traded it for a future one where Jaden Hardy was taken. So they don't, even if the talent is there at the pick, they still don't mind moving off of it.
And that's where I look at getting better this summer. You got three ways. You get Sasha over here, you get your draft pick, or you trade whatever you're talking about, and then you have, and I know you've talked about cap holes and things of that nature, but get a $20 million player, $20 million a year player in here. That's your three spots right there. And once again, you mentioned it during the break. Maybe you turn that draft pick into an established player. I don't know if that cuts down. I'm trying to think. That probably cut down what you could do as far as like free agent. You'd only be adding two players in that instance, where you add Sasha and say you trade the pick for PJ Washington. That would kind of combine as your pick and your off-season acquisition. But I mean, I'm okay with that. We talked about, enticing other teams to maybe fall back from a restricted free agent like Cam Johnson or PJ Washington by saying, hey, we'll give you this first round pick. I'm all for that if they can make that happen.
Yeah, like you have to look at these things as assets, and the Kings are going to be aggressive and trying to build their roster. There's no reason to wait. This is a moment where you got a good team and you have them all at the perfect age. Now go ahead and build it. Go find more players that are around that same age. Maybe you can go one older veteran type player that makes sense. But like I think that they're going to try everything in their power to make the roster better today. And they're not going to mortgage their future, but they're certainly going to keep an open mind to, if they can improve the team greatly, they will. And like whether they you're more likely to trade a later pick, like a 24th pick, than you are the number 9 pick or the number 4 pick. But it's still like at the end of the day, they keep things close to the vest. We have no idea what they'll do until they do it. And, we hear about the things that they were about to do or close to getting afterwards, or like in the moment, we sometimes hear, like the Matisse Thybulle thing was so close, and the Jared Vanderbilt thing was super close. We hear those things, but like this group does keep it close to the vest. And so we don't know. I just know their track record is to draft what they know, not to take flyers, and to trade away second round picks. That's what they've done almost every year.
Hammer, what we have spent the last week and a half talking about since the playoff series came to a conclusion is different players, their roles with the team, their uncertainty with the team, whether it be Trey Lyles, Harrison Barnes, or whatever. We've talked about how important the growth of Keegan Murray could be for this team next year. But one thing that we haven't talked about together is the fact that this coaching staff will be entering its second year together, and this coaching staff will be entering its second year with this team. How much growth is there to come from, do you think? Because we talk about growth with players a lot. We don't often talk about growth within from coaches and within the coaching staff. How much do you think that plays a part into what we see next season?
I think it's huge. Yeah, I think it's huge because look, they were able to find some sort of like lightning in a bottle when it came to the offensive efficiency. Then they got handled in the playoffs, and they realized that their offense had to be, they needed to work on different things and be more versatile offensively once it came to that, to a more physical brand in the playoffs. I think that there's a ton of room to grow, especially on the defensive end. We've talked about that a million times. I don't know if they can get that much more out of this team on the defensive end without making some changes. That's just, you have limitations to certain players, and those limitations are going to be an issue. Again, we talked about like how difficult it would be to have both Trey Lyles and Sasha Vezenkov like in the same rotation, like in, the same 5-man on the floor at the same time. It's possible that would work, but it's also possible that you're going to be too slow and unathletic at the 4 and the 5, and you're just going to get clobbered. So like, there's a lot of things that have to be figured out when it comes to like all that. But like the coaching staff is, I think it's going to remain mostly intact unless Jordy Fernandez somehow gets one of these jobs, and that's possible. I think he's up for the
Toronto.
Toronto job. Yeah. And he was up for the Atlanta job during the season. But I think what we're seeing here is, like, for the most part, this group is going to remain intact, and they will have another year to grow, another summer to work with these players, which is huge. Just think of that. This is the first summer in a while where there hasn't been a general manager or a head coaching change, like within either the summer or the first 2 weeks of the season. So this is a summer where you're growing and you're building off what you did before, and you're cementing some of the basic principles that you had, but then you're adding more and more and more, because now the players' knowledge base is higher, and you can start working from a different spot with these players.
Yeah, and that's something that we talk about with the coaching staff, getting more familiar with the players, but just players to players, being able to, they already did a great job this year of having a certain level of chemistry and symmetry to the way they played on the offensive end. And, it was a struggle on defense sometimes, but well, a lot of the times, but they already had that in year one. I think that's only going to grow stronger. That's only going to grow stronger as well. We didn't talk about it earlier, but defensively, we could see them be better just because they have another year of understanding what the coaching staff wants them to do, and also understanding each other on the defensive end. They kind of made strides a little bit in the postseason, showing that, hey, I know it may be officiated a little different, but we can play a more physical brand of basketball, tougher brand of basketball, better on the defensive end. They can bring those things into this year and have the same type of chemistry potentially on the defensive end as they had on the offensive end, and I think they'll have moving forward on the offensive end.
Yeah, and I'm going to point out too, like, this team spent a bunch of time together last offseason, but Mike wasn't hired until, like, after the Warriors were done with their playoffs, right? So he came on board late. I think we're going to see this group of players spend a lot more time together. Like what they did, they had a couple of instances where I think they met up at Domas's house in Napa for a stretch. They met for like 3 days. I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're also seeing De'Aaron Fox. This was the first year that he really followed the Kings regiment during the summer and not his own. That he was really, really close with the team, as opposed to working with his old trainer in previous seasons. I think he automatically understands that there was value to that, and that he was a better player this year by spending a tremendous amount of time with Luke Laux. And then I'd also say you have a bunch of these other guys that are kind of hanging out, right? So we've got the Kessler Edwards, the PJ Doziers, like those guys. They're still under contract going into, well, at least through the summer. And so we'll see a lot of that type of group working together. A lot of those guys working, like playing 3-on-3 against Keegan Murray and stuff during the offseason. So this group they'll have time to grow together. And then someone else brought up in the chat, like, this is what I kind of mean with the 24th pick. Someone brought up, they asked, didn't the Kings trade like the 21st pick for Marco Bellinelli? And it's actually the switch of that. The Kings traded Marco Bellinelli for I think it was the 21st pick or the 22nd pick, where they drafted Malachi Richardson. That's kind of what I'm talking about, where the Kings can go out and maybe purchase a rotational player with that 24th pick. Like, that's, a $6 to $8 million player that's a 6, 7, 8, 9 man in your rotation, but that really makes sense for you and doesn't make as much sense for the team that you're trading with, because they may want to start over, or they're in a different place in their development. But maybe they've got a player that's under contract for 2 or 3 years that they're like, okay, we don't really need this player right now for where we're at in our world, and we could use that 24th pick to go out and get a younger player to try to develop. And so the Kings could do actually the reverse of the Marco Bellinelli trade.
Did we ask you if of the players that are available, like the realistic options that are available, who would be your primary target in free agency?
I don't know. Like that, it just depends. I mean, because there's all these restricted free agents.
Mhm.
And like, what are you willing to give up to get a restricted free agent out of their contract? Is there a player that you can pay too much in order to get them out? And I don't think that there are ways that the Kings can pay too much, but it would do too much damage and it would be too much of a risk, right? To clear out, to waive your rights to Harrison Barnes's $27.5 million cap hold and just say goodbye,
Who
that
you
kind of
think
stuff.
is like? Do you think Jeremy Grant is in that category? That'd be
No,
too
I mean, I'm
much.
more on the Cam Johnson side than I am on the Jeremy Grant side, just because Jeremy Grant's, 29 going on 30, where Cam's like 27. So at least you're buying a few years younger. Some people bring up Christian Wood. Like the knock on Christian Wood around the league is that he doesn't play a winning brand of basketball. Like take the stats and throw them out the window, which is too bad because if you thought he could actually be that player, he's a perfect fit. He's a guy who can shoot the three, who can rebound, who can play the four alongside of Domas, who can block shots. Like there's so many things that he does. But again, there's a lot of people around the league that, kind of put him in the same category as like a Marvin Bagley. It doesn't really matter what the stats say, they don't impact winning. And so that's a big deal. And that's again where the Kings are at. Leezy in the chat here brought up that I've talked about Kelly Oubre. I think Kelly Oubre would be a nice budget fit for around the mid-level exception at 12 million something. Maybe it might even be up to 13 million this year. But Oubre is a guy who long, athletic, physical, plays angry sometimes, can shoot the three, can play some defense, who might be affordable and fits in. He's also a player who played on De'Aaron Fox's AAU basketball team. They're friends. They've been friends forever. He knows Malik Monk. Like, so there's some sort of camaraderie there and also some sort of accountability I think would be there with Oubre. Like, I think there are a lot of different routes the Kings can go. It just depends on, do they believe that Harrison Barnes is a long-term fit? Do they believe that they can improve this roster and keep Harrison? Can they go swing for the fences and go get an OG and an OB? Like there's so many paths forward here that we're not even considering probably like 50 that they've already discussed and already have on a whiteboard somewhere that we're not going to get an accidental picture of.
What you said always sticks in my mind. What did Monty say? The goal is to
maintain and improve.
Maintain and improve.
Improve.
I don't know. You maintain if you keep Harrison. I don't know if you improve.
Oh, you got to do both.
But you can maintain with him and add Kelly Oubre and improve. So yeah, I mean,
kind of money though.
Well, sure you do. Yeah, because if you signed Harrison Barnes, say to a 3-year deal starting at $14 million a year, then you use your MLE on Kelly Oubre, you use your biannual exception at $4 million on Sasha Vezenkov, and then you retain Trey Lyles using his early bird rights. Okay, you got all 4 of them.
Yeah,
you still have your 24th pick. So yeah, there's a way to do it.
Running out of roster spots, and that's with and I assume, love the brother, that's with Richaun Holmes on the team.
Yeah, and then I mean, like if your money that you have to be a buyer and seller at the same time. Can you find someone that would it cost you both your second round picks this year to get rid of the final 25 years of the final 25 million and 2 years of Richaun Holmes? Would it cost you the 24th pick? Would you consider that? If you knew that the 24th pick led to you having $40 million in cap space and actually become a real player in the free agent market, that's kind of intriguing.
Do you think I'm sorry, David, but do you think there's a scenario where Richaun comes back and is a part of the rotation?
No. Not, and that's not a dig on Richaun, and like I don't want it to be taken as like he's horrible and he doesn't need to be here anymore. Like, look, the Mike Brown had so many opportunities this season to do something different and to turn to Richaun Holmes and get him back in the fold, and he chose not to. Like he gave him an opportunity early in the season and then went back to Metu for 19 games. He gave Nebias Keita like a game and a half. He gave Alex Len like 6 games, 8 games at the end of the season. Like, there was just never a moment where I thought Richaun Holmes was coming back into the rotation, and they need to find a new home for him because his contract, $25 million over 2 years, is a lot. And again, you can stretch provision him and take that, so it's twice the years of the contract plus 1 extra year. So you can take his 2-year deal, stretch it out over 5 years, and pay him $5 million a year for the next 5 years. But that only frees up $7 million in cap space this year and $7 million next year. And then the final 3 years, it eats $5 million. So it's not really worth it. So, like, I expect them to try to do other things with that contract and try to go out and move it some other way, even if it's attaching assets to it. Or if you're doing a much bigger deal where you're swinging for the fences and you're getting a big money player, then a lot of times those are the deals where you tuck in a player like Richaun Holmes and you can get rid of him as part of a bigger deal. He's not an asset in the deal as much as he is salary in a deal. And that's how you would use him in that situation.
I just can't help but wonder how Richaun is viewed throughout the league. Because we look at him here and recognize, all right, like I get why it's maybe not necessarily working out with what Mike Brown wants to do, especially with Domantas Sabonis being here. It's hard for me to believe like he wouldn't work in Golden State. Like, well, he seems like a great player for the way that they play.
Financially, he won't work there, though. Like, I think if you look at a team like Dallas, like, who likes to do the pick and roll stuff, I think it'd be great. Like, there are plenty of teams that he should fit on, but now we're talking about a guy who hasn't played and, he's played very limited minutes in 2 years. That's tough. And I don't know. I don't know how he fits. Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah, fresh legs. Yeah, like I mean, he's clearly a good locker room guy too. I mean, hell, all else fails, call Indiana again. Like, I just don't believe that Richaun doesn't have a place. Like, Richaun can play and he can help somebody.
But there's a big difference between being able to play and helping someone at $5 million a year and being and making 12.5. There is
12's the new 5.
12.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's again where I think you look at a guy like Trey Lyles. Who would you rather have, him or Trey Lyles? And the answer is Trey Lyles, most likely. And Trey Lyles isn't getting $12 million a year. Like, Trey Lyles might get 7, but I don't think so. I think you can get him on a 3 or 15, 3 or 18. So, you'd rather have a player like that than invest heavily 2 years, 25. And there's no way he's going to opt out of that money. There's no way.
Help my timeline again. Monty signed Richaun, right?
He did. But then he lacerated his eye twice and got COVID and then got into a custody battle and things spun out. Like, he had a horrible season.
Well, I mean, all of that is true, and it sucks.
And then they trade for Domas.
Yeah.
And they also let Richaun exhaust every possibility to go find a better deal than what they were willing to offer. And he couldn't.
Charlotte went and got the Lord and Savior. They went and signed Mason Plumlee at the same time. Remember, we thought Charlotte, Toronto were going to make
drafted a center at the same time, Kai Jones.
Yeah, we thought Charlotte and Toronto were going to make the biggest pushes, and nah.
I think it's kind of shocking too that you have a player who like should be able to play a Brandon Clark role. That's what he was before, but he can't do that now, and I don't understand. I don't understand why he can't do it now. And it's weird because you see the pick and rolls with Malik Monk to Chimezie Metu. Not to bash on Chimezie Metu, but like Richaun Holmes is a much better pick and roll player. How is that possible that those two haven't found some sort of chemistry and taken off with the second unit? And the answer is it never happened. They never gave him the opportunity. We heard that there was possibility for Richaun Holmes to start alongside Domantas Sabonis. We heard that the Kings really wanted to keep him last summer. And then you get to it, and like I asked them in training camp, they never once played together at all. Sabonis and Holmes never once were a power forward center tandem for the Kings. So no, there wasn't a possibility.
Man,
it's weird.
It is. It is. But you've got to prepare. You talked about this. I thought this was a great line too, Hammer. Monty's got to be a buyer and a seller. He's got to prepare for. I think you've also got to prepare for Richaun to be here. Like, I think we've had this foregone conclusion that Richaun Holmes is being traded dated back to last trade deadline. Well, he might not be,
right.
And so, can you find a way to make him an effective part of this team? Like, that's not. To be fair to Monty, that's not necessarily a Monty McNair call. That's a Mike Brown conversation. Can we find a way to make Richaun a part of this, which would benefit everybody? Or do we just have a really, really expensive 13th player, 14th player?
Well, that, and I'll throw this to you too really quick. If you just hold on to him till the deadline, there's a possibility that a year and a half of him is worth something that you can actually, use in a trade chip. But even if you get to the end of the season, then you're looking at a stretch provision on a 1 year, $12.5 million contract. So I'd much rather pay 3 years at $4 million than 5 years at $5 million. And that's how they would look at it, because that's what his contract would break up to the next year.
I'd like Richaun Holmes to find a way to get on a basketball court, and if it's not in Sacramento, I hope it's somewhere else.
Me too.
Hey, I want to ask both of you guys before we get out of here, who has a better chance of keeping their season going tonight, Knicks or Warriors?
Warriors.
Oh man, end them both tonight.
No,
I got Heat and Lakers getting it done.
Oof.
I actually got Knicks and Warriors winning tonight.
Heat and Lakers.
Knicks in 7.
All
Knicks
right.
in 7.
Knicks in 7.
Lakers
oh my
in
gosh.
6.
I'm anxious. I'm anxious for that game. Is that a 4? That's a 4:30. I was going to do the All NBA announcements coming up. Well, we appreciate you so much for being